A man, myth, and legend is remembered by many Friday night in Vegas. Nicknamed the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis is considered one of the greatest and most influential boxers of all time, residing here in Southern Nevada after his fighting days. Over 40 years since he passed, a tribute is held to honor his legacy and all the accomplishments that he made that go far beyond the ring.
I think his impact was bigger outside the ring. Just people just really don't realize it.
Rising to fame in the 1930s, Louis helped break the color barrier during and after World War II. His most famous fight against the German, viewed as the first time in America that a white audience cheered for an African American competing against a white man. He continued to have his hand on history during the Civil Rights Movement, called by many an international hero. While boxing memorabilia and photos covered this event at the Clark County Government Center, Louis's kids consider much more in his impact.
Breaking the color barrier in golf, helping to break the color barrier in baseball. When Jackie Robinson was court-martialed, my dad stood up for him so that he could go on and break the color barrier there. When Althea Gibson couldn't afford to make the trip to break the color barrier at Wimbledon, my dad paid for her trip. My dad's sense of right and wrong and justice and his love for our country was important. There will never be a time again in history when I think our country will need a hero, and Joe Louis kind of answered the call.
He was the first African American to golf on the PGA Tour. He desegregated the military. He wouldn't fight in front of segregated audiences. So there were so many areas in society that he broke color barriers that it's almost amazing that one man could be responsible for so much. This just makes me really, really happy because his last fight was 70 plus years ago. So to think that people still remember him and still recognize him and still want to honor him is just a huge blessing to our family, and I couldn't be more proud. And it's nice because my daughters are here, so they get to see a little bit about their grandfather and how much he meant to people.
Louis won 25 consecutive defenses of his heavyweight title, a record for all weight classes. He also was champion longer than any other boxer in history, from 1937 through 1949.
I studied the history of boxing, and I've watched the films on the immortal Joe Louis, and his style of fighting, his courage in the ring, especially during that particular era, a tough era to be in. For an African American. And when you are involved in sports and you become an international hero, you can kind of galvanize people together of all races, because people appreciate your talent, people appreciate the way you carry yourself. And the way he carried himself, he was a gentleman, actually in the ring and outside the ring. He really brought people together and brought light to himself. Not only to himself, but to everybody who was involved in that particular sport. A lot of the people in the rural areas didn't really have TV, but they had the radio, and they had the play-by-play by the radio announcer, which brings it even more into effect.
Known as a larger-than-life personality, those closest to Louis remember a man that draws a contrast from his knockout punches.
My dad was the most gentle person you can imagine. I mean, if I didn't see his films of boxing, I would never ever in a million years think that he was a boxer. He was the most gentle person ever. And I mean, so many times he would get me out of school and take me golfing with him, and let me drive the golf cart. I never heard him raise his voice. I never heard him get mad. Just like the most gentle giant you could imagine. Just what a sweet, sweet guy.
Just a very kind and warm and giving man. I do remember that very clearly, that people would come and talk to him at Caesars and give them his stories, like, oh Joe, I'm struggling, and I don't have money to pay my house note, and he'd pop off his watch or empty out his pockets. It was instilled very early by his actions that we are not born just for ourselves, but to help others. And I think that's the way that all of us have lived our lives. I think that was the greatest example of the love he had of people. And so we try to walk in that daily. And I think that that's what's so important now, because our kids need to see that. People came together and rallied behind him. It didn't matter the race or the creed or the economic status of the individual. They rallied behind Joe Louis, and we need that right now. The world needs humanity. We need a champion, and he's still here.
Lewis's family, Las Vegas, and the boxing world have a fond memory of one of the more important figures in American sports history. And with tributes like these, his children hope that the example that he set in and out of the ring can inspire future generations to be more than just a boxer. From Clark County Government Center, I'm Nick Walters.